Hey everybody, my name is Aaron and thank you again for joining me. So in this video, I'm going to be a little more informal as I talk about a side project that I've been working on. So my buddy and I have been building KVM clusters at our workplaces, and we thought, wouldn't it be awesome to build our own HA system using nothing but shell scripts? So from that conversation came SIF. So SIF stands for Simple Integrated Failover, and it's a simple HA tool for dual host KVM clusters. It's intended to be turnkey, hands-free for keeping your VMs highly available and limiting downtime in the case of host failure. System requirements are very minimal: KVM with libvirt, systemd, open SSH server on both of your hosts, and configured shared storage, NFS or iSCSI. In my case, I'm using NFS. Please check the wiki for other best practices and FAQs. Right now, we've tested it on RHEL 8.3, which I'm using for this demo, Debian 10, and Debian 11. Installation is super easy. Download the files through a web browser, use git clone, and run the installer that we provided. Do this on both of your hosts, and boom, you have a highly available KVM cluster. So here's what I'm looking at right now. I have two KVM hosts, Tally and Liara. You're going to notice a bunch of Mass Effect references here, so if you're an ME fan, you're in luck today. Alright, so Tally and Liara have a shared storage location on Cerberus, which is running on TrueNAS. This shared storage location, which I will bring up here, is where all of our VMs live, and also where SIF does a lot of its magic. So during the installation of SIF, it creates two directories, SIFlog and SIFXML. SIFlog is where all the SIF logs are stored. It's also where failure flags are made, and I'll explain that here shortly. Also, SIFXML. This is where your VM's metadata lives. So if I drill into this directory, you'll see I have a 0 and a 1, because during the installation, it assigns a number to each of your hosts. So in this case, Tally is 0, and Liara is 1. If I open up Liara, I have a file in here, Normandy, which is the name of the VM that's currently running on Liara. Let me jump back here. All right. So in a typical cluster here, if we have no form of HA running, if something were to happen to Liara here, let's say you're having a really bad day, you spill your coffee, Liara is fried. Obviously, the VM running on Liara is also not going to be running now. Without HA, this server, virtual server, and any of its services are now no longer functioning. You're going to have a bunch of not very happy users, knocking your door down. You don't want that. So what HA does is it makes your other host, we'll say, cluster aware, so that it can quickly fire up this VM and limit the amount of downtime. So obviously, in catastrophic host failure, there's always downtime. The goal of HA is not to make zero downtime, it's to limit that downtime as much as possible and to do it gracefully. So what SIF does at a technical level is it runs as a systemd service, and part of that service is a watcher. Now what the watcher does is it's constantly back and forth saying, hey, are you there? Hey, are you there? Hey, are you there? Ideally, the other host responds back, yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here. And this is happening both ways. If for some reason, like I said, you dump your coffee on one of your hosts, or power outage, or whatever issue, one of your hosts should recognize this and begin a proper failover process. So what SIF actually does is, I will bring up here so you can see it in action. So it will try to ping the other host on an interval that you set. So this could be 30 seconds, this could be 30 minutes. This is whatever you want to set up for your environment. If for some reason it can't ping the primary interface, it will then ping a secondary interface that you configure. This is where I would recommend setting a VM. A VM, it's going to be highly available as well, that you should always be running. And then the third option, your third interface, is going to be a highly available gateway. So let's explain why that is. So let's say, like in my example, Liara is now toast. Tally will go and try to hit the primary interface on Liara, not get a response. It'll try again, not get a response. Try the secondary interface. Obviously that VM's not running. No response. Try again, no response. At this point, it's starting to think, okay, Liara is probably toast. However, that's not necessarily the case. This host could actually be isolated. Perhaps there's a networking issue and this host is actually the one that's been set onto an island here. So it needs to try to ensure that its own networking is working correctly and it can get to a shared gateway between the two. If both of those are yes, at that point it assumes there has been a host failure. So it begins the failover process. First thing it does is it creates a failure flag. This is a simple little 1 kilobit file that it creates in the SIF log directory here. And all that file has is a 1 or a 0 in it, associated with whatever host had failed. So if Liara fails, it will make a little file with just a 1 in it. That's all. And what actually happens is, at that point, Tally will grab the disk image and the metadata for Normandy and fire them up over here. So limits the amount of downtime. That VM's up and running, so at least your services are available to your users. Okay, so let's skip forward a little bit. You get Liara fixed up, you take out the dehydrator, get all the coffee out of them. Good to go. Turn Liara back on. What happens is SIF at boot will always first check to see if a failure flag exists in that shared directory. If a flag does exist, it will then look to see which host failed. It's going to find its own number, and then it's going to say, oh, I failed. Well, I now know that my partner host is running my VMs. It's holding my resources. So what it will do is it will do a quick pre-flight check to make sure everything is back up and running. Then after that, it will clear this flag. As that's happening, as it's doing its check and clearing the flag, this host is in a failover state. So what it's effectively doing is constantly checking, is that flag still there? Is that flag still there? And it'll just do that over and over and over again until that flag disappears. At that point, it says, okay, the other host is back up and running. Everything must be good. It has access. It can see me. I am now safe to live migrate the VM back. And this, like I said, happens live. So this VM never actually drops during the process. So just like that, you're back up to your original setup. Okay, that all sounds cool. Let's see it in action. All right, so I have a live feed coming from Tally. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a simulated failover on Liara here. We're going to force this guy off.
A few moments later.
There we go. So I just yanked the power on Liara. So what will happen is on this next check within 30 seconds, you will see it begin to detect that there's a problem. I might use some quick internet magic here to speed this up. Oh, there you go. Host pair is not active. It's now trying the failsafe check. That VM's not active. Now it's checking to make sure that its gateway is active, which it is. So now it's going to do the second time to ensure that it's not just a small transient issue. All right, so you can see it tried again. So since it failed the second time, it is assuming that there has been a host failure. Now what it's going to do, it's going to sleep for 1 VM time cycle. And what that means is if a host detects that it's been isolated, it will begin to gracefully first and then forcefully second shut down the VMs to ensure you don't have 2 KVM hosts trying to touch the disk image at the same time, which can cause massive corruption. So it is kind of a rudimentary form of what's called stoneth, which is shoot the other node in the head. But effectively what it is trying to give the other host time to nicely shut down the VMs before it basically forcibly takes them and turns them on. So this will multiply for the number of VMs that it detects running on that other host.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Okay, so if you look there, if you can see it, it says creating VM domain Normandy. At this point, it actually grabbed the disk image and the XML metadata and started the VM. So that VM is actively running right now on this particular host. And I can actually show you by going into a new tab here. We'll do sudo versh list. So you can see Normandy's up and running. So Normandy is actually running an Apache server. So if I refresh this page, I can see Apache still up and running. It's alive. Everything worked well. Service is up. Users are happy. And now if you look, it says failover fail flag still present because like I mentioned before, it created the failure flag and now it's just in this failover state waiting for the other host to come back online. If I go into that SIF log, you can see there's a new fail flag that's been created. And if I bring it up here, you can see all it has is a 1 in it because host number 1 had failed. Also part of this is it created this nice failover log here so you can see what's happened so far. You can see whenever the failover event has been triggered, at what timestamp it went down, what all VMs were migrated. So that's pretty handy. Okay, so I'm going to use some quick internet magic here and we'll speed this video up. I'm going to turn the other host back on.
Several bad puns later.
Alright, so our host is back up and running now. What it's going to do is begin its pre-flight check to make sure that its networking stack is up and running and that it can ping the other host that's currently holding its VM. Once that happens, it will then safely clear out that failure flag, telling Tally that it's safe to live migrate the VMs back to it. So we should see that on the next check, which happens quite frequently here. Okay, there it is. If you look there, it says fail flag no longer present, starting cluster restoration. It migrates all the VMs live, so it never dropped, and then basically updates the log and then begins the cycle all over again. And if I run this command here to show many running VMs, I should have nothing because we moved them over, which we did. Let's make sure that we can still reach Normandy, which we can. He's up and running. So everything has been restored in our cluster. We're good to go. We mitigated a lot of downtime and everything is running well. So that is SIF in a nutshell. If it's something that you like or want to get into, please feel free to jump on the GitHub, download it, test it out, send in some issues, send in some pull requests. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. Until next time, thanks for joining me, guys. Have a good one.